Authorities believe, as we just heard, that the explosion was an intentional act and still no motive.
Yes, they did, and that is obviously understated, but a very serious situation if it was intentional, which it was apparently. And they're searching very carefully, and the FBI has not told a lot of details of what they found, but they're trying to find who the perpetrators were and what was the motive for it. Was it just a statement that was being made, or was it to destabilize, make the country feel destabilized? Because many of the electrical power supplies in those areas throughout Tennessee and Kentucky have actually been disrupted. So that's infrastructure we're talking about, Janie. It's very, very serious. And we have to wait and see what comes up.
Yes, we certainly do. And it happened on Christmas morning. It's now your Boxing Day. And thank you very much for spending the festive season with us on a lighter note. How did you spend Christmas? Was it quite quiet?
Well, with COVID, it was pretty much a family affair. And it was delicious what my wife and daughter had cooked. And I got on that a little bit also, but it was wonderful being with the family, the immediate family mainly. As we urge everyone to do that, not to go and visit extended family members in other houses that don't live with them. It's extremely important that the American population take this very seriously and quarantine and, get tested and the whole thing, because now we're facing a new virus. About 50 countries have banned travel from the UK, and we haven't done that yet fully from this virus that originated in England. So that's very serious. We took it very seriously. We enjoyed Christmas. My daughter loved the Christmas presents and the tree.
Well, that's very good to hear. And yes, as you mentioned, the new border closures and so forth, and that new mandate which was brought in this week asking for all travellers from the UK to have a negative test, and those new rules coming in, and no doubt we will be seeing plenty more.
Yes, indeed, because this is a very serious, it's a human problem first and foremost, causing a lot of suffering and pain, but also it's an economic problem. I mean, it's a national security problem and a threat to the economy and the well-being of Americans. You've got millions of people unemployed right now. And that's another problem as to why the president did not sign the COVID stimulus package, which would have helped. It's not the best one, but it could have been a good beginning. And then he could have gone and gotten more money. But he's refusing to sign it. He might even veto it possibly. And that is throwing a big monkey wrench into the whole works and hurting a lot of people. I mean, millions of people rely on extended food stamps, on the $300 a week that was going to be put out to be given to people till March, and a $600 stimulus was going to be there for people as well. And all that's gone up in smoke right now until the president decides to sign it, if he does sign it at all. Otherwise, it's going to be a wait up to the next administration, which will be way too long to wait for this.
And how long have we got until President Donald Trump has to sign it? Is it Monday?
He does have several days to do it, and he has to sign it within really soon. And if he doesn't, it basically expires and does not become law unless Congress overrides him. There's a possibility they can do this override quickly and they did vote 2/3 majority to pass it, but it has to be vetoed by him first and then overridden by the Congress. If it doesn't, then the base of the bill dies because a new session of Congress comes in with the old session going out. And that's like a pocket veto, so that can also happen, and people will suffer nevertheless.
And another factor, Professor, that people are dealing with is mental health. Huge concerns in lockdown and seeing the virus and obviously the job losses as well.
It's a horrendous situation, and we only think about the physical health most of the time of people being infected and having to go to these emergency rooms and wait for hours and not get treated right away, and sometimes even sent home if they're not serious enough. And yet the mental health is a huge part that's kind of hidden for a lot of people. And yet we know from the reports that mental health problems have arisen tremendously. I believe even suicide rates have gone up. And this is having a tremendous impact on the morale of the people and the economy also, obviously, as well. But first and foremost, it's a human problem, and we got to care more about each other and wear those masks. And the leadership has to be, from the top down, adamant about having masks worn by everyone and keep social distancing. Don't go out to shop unless you absolutely have to for food, for example. And California is suffering the brunt of it. We're becoming the epicenter now, and I'm in LA County, which is the epicenter of the epicenter. That's a big, dangerous situation.
How are people being in terms of getting testing? Are they being diligent at all?
They are. Some people are really going out and getting tested when they have the earliest symptoms. But here's the problem, Janie. About 40% of people who are infected are asymptomatic. They show no symptoms whatsoever. 40 to 50% don't show symptoms, so they don't get tested, and yet they can be passing on, and they are passing on the virus if they don't take precautions. And I'm very concerned about our children being in the public schools with the schools wide open in some cases. Most public schools are closed. and they're doing distance learning. But some private schools, many private schools are open, and a few public schools have opened up partially, but still there's that contact with young people. And as they get older, beyond the age of 10, they become even more apt to spread the virus like adults. Below 10, the viral load is still high. So we need to really get a handle on this and do it quickly, and then that way it'll be over. But we can just do this the right thing for the next 2 or 3 months. The vaccine is already here. It's been distributed to 1 million people already. They've taken it. Actually, 1 million vaccinations have been taken. And so we're on our way, but it still has to go a long ways.
And what are you hearing regarding people who are anti-vaxxers? Has this been causing a huge problem?
It is a major problem because about 20% of Americans are refusing to take the vaccine under any circumstance. So up to about 80% are willing to take it. At this point, the polls have gone from 51% willing to take it to about 73% in some polls willing to take it. So there's been an expansion of the number of people who have been educated about it and are willing to take it. And yet about a solid 20% say they will not take it under any circumstances. And they have to be convinced that this is not a dangerous vaccine. It's not a plot by the government. This is a public health need and necessity. And Australia, by the way, is a great example of how you guys treat this and immediately deal with it right away. And people use reason over there, it seems to me, and that's why your numbers are so low compared to ours and other countries in the world as well.
Professor, state data that was published this week talks about the Senate runoff election in Georgia will determine whether the Democrats control both the changes of the Congress and the fate of President-elect Joe Biden's agenda. A very important election. Which way do you think it will go?
The Georgia election for the U.S. Senate, the 2 seats, is the most important election right after the presidential one. And right now, it is impossible to see which way it will go, but it looks good for the Democrats because they are united. They're making it a national campaign. In fact, both John Ossoff, one of the candidates, and Reverend Ralph Warnock, the other one, the Democrats, raised $100 million each in the last few weeks from nationwide donations and Georgia donations. That shows there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of people on the ground there from around the country and in Georgia, going door to door, getting people registered to vote. And now they're already registered to getting them to cast their vote. Republicans are divided a bit because of what happened with President Trump's threatening of the veto, and also, most importantly, President Trump refusing to accept the election results of what happened. And so, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate and the House, Senate rather, in Congress, Mitch McConnell has said to the Republican senators, do not join any kind of a protest against the results of the vote, accept it. And yet there are many Republican senators and Congress people and voters especially who still want to keep on protesting and support President Trump in his protest against the election. So January 6th is a key date. As you know, the official electoral vote count takes place formally by the vice president in front of both houses. And the houses then have to confirm that count unless someone objects. If there are one senator, one congressperson that objects to the count, the final electoral vote count and result, then each house goes into session, and then they in closed session, and they discuss and debate for a couple of hours at least where they should actually confirm the electoral count or sustain the objection. If the objection is sustained, then the vote goes into the House of Representatives, with each state voting as one delegation, one vote. So there are 50 states, and the Republicans have the majority of state delegations, and it's conceivable in a completely unlikely scenario that President Trump could actually win that vote if it goes that far. But I don't believe it will. One of the houses, probably the House of Representatives, will block that objection and sustain the actual vote. So that's going to be an interesting day to watch, January 6th.
It certainly is, yes. Well, very well explained and fascinating to watch. Peter Mathews, Professor, we have to leave it there, but thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Boxing Day. You and your family take care.